Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to you and your team for putting this together. I'm really happy to be here and to meet everyone. And also, Sandy, thank you so much for your presentation. I got really excited because I come from a geological survey, and seeing geological maps and data always make me happy. So thank you for that. So I'm going to talk about collaboration in resource management, basically, and that's what we're dealing with here, responsible raw materials. And being at UNEC at the moment, I think it's good to think about why we're doing this and why it's important. We have a lot of challenges together that's not just for one country or one city or one company. It's global challenges that we need to solve. And the best way forward to doing that is not to do it alone, because then it can go in all sorts of ways and maybe contradictory ways, but instead to do it together. And by doing it together, you need to agree on what to do and why you do it. So a few things that the UN is really good at is to bring people together and find ways forward, identify the challenges and find ways forward to solve them. And of course, it's not perfect all the time, but without it, I think it would be even more difficult. So from 2015, when I think it was almost 200 countries that signed the global goals, there was a lot of work, of course, before we could end up with this list of 17 goals. And all that is collaboration between countries, but it's also a lot of collaboration between people, persons who have a lot of knowledge. And I think Sandy said that we're guided by data, and I think that goes for this kind of work as well. And with the data, also the experts on so many different things coming together and work with that. And then we also had, of course, the Paris Agreement, where also almost 200 people signed, and how to tackle the climate mitigation. Data shows us that climate changes are real. How are we going to deal with that? And after that, I think it became obvious to a lot of people. I don't think it was obvious to everyone before this agreement how this would affect the mining industry and all the people that are affected by the mining industry. But once the collaboration got started on this, it became obvious that if you want to replace fossil fuels, for instance, you will need other technologies, and you will need to have raw materials to create those different technologies. And from that, these diagrams are they are a few years old, but I use them because I think they show very well what this Paris Agreement and also actually the global goals is a little bit about, to work towards something better. And it's I think it's good to remind ourselves sometimes when people start to get worried about, oh, it's going to be so many mines. So yes, it's going to be mines, and they are going to affect the environment and the communities around a mine. But nowadays it can be done in a very good way compared to 50 years ago. So just to remind us all why we're opening mines, it's because we would like to limit the use of fossil fuels, of course. And moving on from that, I think it's actually working. And I think part of why it's working is because a lot of the people doing this collaboration from a number of different countries, they have understood one of the most important things about collaboration. That's that you need to listen a lot, and you need to have similar grounds to start from. And for that, you would need a lot of data. And that's why I showed you this picture, because it actually shows that things are changing, but it also gives a common platform to understand what's going on. I don't know if you see my pointer here, but the diagram on the left shows the electricity generation mix for different regions, and also the global mix. And for all the regions, you see a quite big part of renewables and nuclear, and a smaller part of oil and coal, which is it gives us a glance at 2024. We have also something here that shows us what's going on with the global energy demand, how it's growing. And all of those areas are growing. And that's also something to take in when you want to consider where you want to go to, and how to mitigate those climate risks, for instance. We can also see that electricity demand increased last year, but there is good news in this picture because coal went down. So the demand went down, I should say. But the renewable generation is set to surpass coal in 2025. So these data are important, and data similar to this is important to have when you want to continue the discussion. And this one, I don't think, this is from my former employer, the Geological Survey of Sweden. I think this picture is so good to show when we want to talk about responsible raw materials value chain, and we want to talk about how to get access to those value chains. The production is not evenly spread across the globe. And if those parts of the world who are not having so much production at the moment, if they are going to be able to contribute to the Paris Agreement, for example, they would need to have access to those raw materials. And in order to get access, they can do it in a number of different ways, but one way is to trade with the regions that actually do produce. And that's where, of course, the collaboration through trade comes in. And if you don't collaborate, you won't be able to sort of move the raw materials to different places where they are needed. So I think this one is an eye-opener for many. I very often show this, and I see a lot of people taking pictures of these slides. I think when it was created by a colleague of mine at the survey, it was a really smart thing to do, because it's helped a lot of discussions and negotiations and collaborations moving forward, because we can understand how the world looks like in terms of production. It's not only to get access to raw materials and renewable energy. We also want it to be done in a fair way and a more just and prosperous way for everyone. And that's why the UN Secretary General created this panel on critical energy transition metals or minerals. And that's, of course, also a huge collaboration across the globe on and between different countries on how this is to be done. And this these people came up with, and it was my colleagues were involved, but a number of different UN bodies were involved, but also experts from all over the world, came up with principles and ways forward to handle this on a global level, through a lot of discussions, a lot of sharing of knowledge and information between different stakeholders. And this is what these are tools that UNECE provides and they have been there for the one on the left. UNFC has been there for something like 20 years. The one on the right is a little bit newer. But these tools are also ways of classifying different projects. It could be mining projects, recycling projects, it could be renewable projects, in order to get an overview and to manage your resources in a more efficient way. But not only efficient in terms of production and economy, but also in terms of the socioeconomic and environmental aspects. So they are also classified in this diagram, and by doing that you can also analyze how is your system working? Do we need to improve some regulations? Do we need to improve permitting processes? And in order to do that, we also have UNRMS, which is a tool that provides guidance on governance, on policies, legal and regulatory stuff, and institutional and stakeholder aspects. So this package of things is something that is also very helpful in moving forward on this. And only by meeting with people, working with this, you get a broader understanding about what's going on in your own country, what's going on in your region, and what's going on globally with these. By using these tools, and you meet and you discuss, and how do you apply it? How do you apply it in your jurisdiction? So there is a lot of learning and sharing going on just with these two tools. And they are actually nowadays applied in the European Commission's or European Union's Critical Raw Materials Act, but also on the African continent with UNFC AMREC, which is a system for sustainable management across Africa. And it's interesting when you talk about to achieve those. It's really big achievements to have the Act and the AMREC Park established in those two regions, and it has been a lot of collaboration, of course, before that could happen. But something that I learned when I was part of the negotiating team for the Critical Raw Materials Act, and all the member states met and we discussed, and something that I was actually quite impressed by all those people who were there to negotiate was their ability to listen and learn and take in from others. I think listening is a key aspect in collaboration and in moving things forward. And I think what was like a receipt on how well that negotiation worked was that it's the fastest negotiation that's ever been done in the EU. And it was done during the Swedish presidency. And we thought when we started this that this is going to be so difficult because nobody wants mines, nobody wants mining. Even recycling is a challenge. But because of the awareness between the member states about how important this was for EU and for the whole European region, it actually went really smooth. And every country contributed with knowledge that they had. If they don't have mines, maybe they are good at processing or they're good at recycling. So they shared knowledge about that. And this really pushed the whole thing forward in a very speedy way. And you're going to hear more about the African developments from my colleague Harry. I think he's in the afternoon or on Thursday. So you'll hear more about that. But that's really impressive work that they have done. And the work continues. I think it was last week world leaders met to prepare for COP30 in Brazil and to reach out to different countries in the world to remind them of that it's time to renew the commitments that they did for the Paris Agreement. So that's also been preceded, of course, with a lot of discussions, and the discussions will continue going forward. And it's also important to remember in all this that now I've mentioned governments a number of times, but it's actually not only governments, it's also the industry and it's the local communities that are all going into this and contributing. And then it's also what Sarah started with, that we should be respectful and listen even also here. That's the only way to move this forward. So I think that's my last slide. Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Erika. A round of applause, everybody, for the wonderful Erika. And I think what you were pulling out there in terms of that ability to listen, but also, I guess, when everybody respects what one another are bringing to the table, but also feels maybe agency in terms of what they're bringing to the table as well. Do you think those were some of the secret ingredients in terms of that rapid negotiation, as you mentioned?
I think so. And I think for me, it was a new experience to be part of this whole EU community, but I was quickly impressed by those that led the negotiations from each country. They of course know each other, and they knew the strengths of each country, and they knew what was difficult in different countries. So we could find a way forward with different issues. So I would say that in those negotiations, it was never a question about mining or recycling or these kind of issues. It was more, how do we make it work in a federal state compared to a non-federal state? Or how do we make this work in a country that actually doesn't have anything in the ground? How can they contribute? And how can we lessen the burden from them? Some articles will put a lot of work to the member states if they have interesting geology, but that work shouldn't have to be done by a country that doesn't have anything. So it was these kind of things that were discussed. And it was also something that was discussed was, for example, local communities and indigenous people. And it was really important. So there are only 2 countries in the EU who actually have recognized indigenous people, and that's Finland and Sweden. But it was really important for everybody to make sure that the issues that would concern them, or not the countries, but the indigenous people, were put in the right and instrumental place in the act. So in the beginning, it was in some part on the side, and then it moves to somewhere where it was completely technically wrong. But in the end, I think it ended up in the right place, where it can become instrumental both for those people that needs to be heard, and also that it's doable for member states to do this. So I think these are just a few examples, but I think the ability to listen was super important, and something that I was really impressed by, that this actually worked. And I think that's what I'm also experiencing now. I'm working with UNFC basically now that I'm with UNEC, and that's also something I experience here, that people are so willing to share and very good at listening.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So with that, thank you very, very much, Erika. Round of applause, everybody, for the lovely Erika.